Hold on tight because this story is about to get intense. A scream tore through the silence in the lobby of Harbor and Smith Ink Bank. Marble floors so polished you could use them as mirrors, crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than most people's cars, and receptionists who looked like they'd been hired from a modeling agency. It was the kind of place where even the air felt expensive and everyone knew their place in the hierarchy. Early one cold morning, the glass doors swung open and in walked Damon Carter. Hoodie zipped up, worn jeans, sneakers that had stories to tell, and a calm confidence that somehow made him invisible to everyone around him. To the suits in that lobby, he might as well have been carrying a mop bucket. The receptionist didn't even look up from her screen. "Delivery?" she asked, her voice carrying that special kind of politeness reserved for people she considered beneath her pay grade. Damon smiled. Not the fake corporate smile everyone else wore, but something genuine. "No delivery. I'm here to go up to the executive floor." Now that got her attention. She looked at his hoodie, then his face, then back at the hoodie like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, I'll wait." Cue the music because this is where it gets good. Security approached like they were dealing with a trespasser at a five-star hotel. The taller guard, muscles bulging under his uniform, delivered his lines with practiced authority. "Sir, delivery entrance is on the side. This lobby is for clients and executive access only." Damon stayed calm. "I'm not delivering anything, I'm visiting." "Name?" "Damon Carter." The receptionist typed frantically, frowning at her screen like it had personally offended her. "You're not in our system. I didn't make an appointment." And here's where our story takes its first delicious turn. The guard's tone sharpened to a knife's edge. "Then I'm gonna have to ask you to step outside until you're cleared." Damon reached into his hoodie pocket, not for ID but for his phone. He backed toward a bench and said those legendary words that would later become a TikTok sound. "I'll just wait here. I have some time." What they didn't know, what nobody in that pristine lobby knew, was that Damon Carter wasn't just any visitor. He was the new owner of the entire company. His holding company, Valor Holdings, had recently closed the acquisition. But unlike other billionaires who announced their purchases with champagne and press conferences, Damon preferred the element of surprise. He wanted to see the truth before the cleanup crew arrived. And what he saw was already telling a story that would make your blood boil. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The story gets crazy. After some time of awkward staring, the elevator chimed and out stepped the man who would become the villain of our story. Malcolm Langford, COO, Harvard graduate, and walking stereotype of corporate arrogance. Picture your worst boss. Multiply by 10 and add a suit that probably costs more than your rent. Malcolm walked past Damon like he was furniture until the receptionist called out, "Mr. Langford, there's someone in the lobby asking to go up. Says his name is Damon Carter." Malcolm turned, squinted at Damon like he was trying to identify a strange insect, and then delivered his line with the kind of condescending charm that makes you want to throw something at the screen. "Ah, you must be lost. We don't do walk-ins on the executive level." Damon stood slowly. "I'm not lost." Malcolm's smile became sharper than a blade. "You sure you're in the right building?" "I'm exactly where I need to be." But Malcolm had already mentally filed Damon under problem to be solved. His tone dropped to ice-cold corporate speak. "Well, we're running a tight schedule today. Let's not waste executive time." Damon didn't budge. "I'll wait." Malcolm gave him one last look, the kind of look that said, "You don't belong here and we both know it." Then he walked away, pausing only to whisper to the receptionist, "Flag security if he lingers too long." Damon sat back down, pulled out his phone, and smiled to himself. This was going to be very interesting. Comment below if you've ever been judged by your appearance. This hits different when you realize what's coming. As Damon continued his quiet investigation, he became the corporate world's greatest undercover investigator. He didn't storm in demanding respect. He watched, he listened, and he documented everything. What he discovered behind those polished glass walls was worse than simple arrogance. It was a system designed to keep people like him on the outside. He watched how black employees were cut off in meetings with phrases like, "Let's keep it tight," or "We're moving past that." He saw how women's ideas were only validated when repeated by men in expensive suits. He observed how the company's most praised projects seemed to revolve around one insular circle, white, male, and led by Malcolm Langford. But then he met Lila. Lila Ree was everything the company claimed to value but consistently overlooked. Brilliant logistics analyst, in her early 30s with natural curls she kept professionally styled, and notebooks filled with ideas that could revolutionize their operations. She moved through the office with quiet confidence, speaking with precision when she got the chance. Damon first heard her speak in a strategy meeting he'd slipped into using a borrowed name badge. Lila broke down a shipping bottleneck with such efficiency it made Damon lean forward in his seat. This woman was good. But as she wrapped up her presentation, manager Brent chimed in with the corporate death sentence. "Let's circle back to this later. There's probably a simpler fix." Lila didn't argue. She just nodded and let the room move on without her. "This is where it gets personal, y'all." Later, Damon found Lila in the break room pouring coffee that looked like it had been sitting there since the Clinton administration. "Hey, I heard your logistics model this morning. It was sharp." She turned, surprised. "You were in there?" "Yeah, back corner. They called me Jacob. Long story." She laughed, the first genuine laugh he'd heard in that building. "Thanks. Not sure it mattered." "It mattered. Why'd they shoot it down?" Leela's answer hit like a punch to the gut. "Because it wasn't their idea and because I don't look like I belong in the room that makes the decisions." Damon studied her tired but undefeated expression. "How long you been here?" 5 years. I've trained 3 guys who are now my boss, but you probably figured that out already." The pattern was becoming crystal clear. Damon smiled, but his eyes stayed serious. "Yeah, I'm seeing a pattern." Lila looked at him curiously. "You don't work in operations, do you?" "Nope." "What's your real job then?" Damon chose his words carefully. "The kind where I get to see who shows up when they think no one's watching." Lila stared at him for a beat too long, then offered a knowing smile. "Well, watch carefully. This place has layers." Smash that like button if Lila deserves better. Trust me, she gets it. As Damon left the break room, he glanced at the bulletin board. A flyer for the Leadership Advancement Program hung there proudly, featuring 10 faces, all white, all male, with Malcolm Langford's arms around 2 of them like he was handing out Olympic medals. The message was clear. Success had a very specific look at Harbor and Smith. Damon pulled out his phone and typed, "Observed pattern of silencing non-white staff. Potential culture audit needed. Track Lila's project outcome, my FD-W05-0." But Malcolm Langford wasn't stupid. Something about the hoodie guy had been bothering him for some time. It wasn't just that Damon kept showing up, it was how he showed up, moving through the building like he owned it, asking questions that were too precise, watching things he shouldn't have known existed. So Malcolm did what paranoid executives do. He called it T. Here's where our story takes a dark turn. "Malcolm, we ran that access scan you requested," came the voice of Philip Donnelly, head of IT. "Your guy in the hoodie, he's been poking around." Malcolm leaned forward, gripping his pen like a weapon. "Define poking." "Accessed internal personnel files, logistics chain audits, old shareholder data from the acquisition folder. He's not just browsing, he knows where to look." Malcolm's stomach dropped. "Is he still in the system?" "Not under that ID, but our logs show he's using elevated permissions tied to an unregistered administrator account." Malcolm stood up, pacing. "Pull the logs, print everything, and flag HR. We might have a breach." But Malcolm wasn't just covering his bases, he was preparing for war, and Lila was about to become collateral damage. The next morning, Lila walked into work to find her name mysteriously missing from a recurring operations meeting she'd attended for years. Confused, she went to HR, where she was met by a nervous-looking rep named Rachel. "Lila, I'm gonna need you to step aside for a quick compliance chat." "A compliance chat?" Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper. "Malcolm Langford filed a concern yesterday, said you've been sharing internal data with someone unauthorized." Lila felt the world tilt. "Excuse me?" He didn't give names, but we've been asked to audit your communications, email, messages, desk access. That afternoon, Lila found Damon by the vending machine reading an expense report on his phone. Her voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "You might have just cost me my job." Damon looked up slowly. "What happened?" "Langford flagged me, said I leaked files. HR pulled me into a side room like I was smuggling state secrets." Damon's jaw tensed. "You didn't leak anything." "Doesn't matter. Perception's enough. And now I'm being treated like a criminal." "I'll fix it." Lila laughed bitterly. "Fix it? You haven't even told me who you are." Damon paused, then said carefully, "I'm someone who came here to change this place." She stared at him, reading something deeper in his tone, regret perhaps, or the weight of a truth he wasn't ready to reveal. "Well, if you're going to change anything, do it fast." Before she left, she whispered, "Whatever this is, whoever you are, they know you're not supposed to be here." Comment, "Justice for Lila if you're as mad as I am right now." Later that evening, Damon sat in his hotel room, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. He drafted a message to his team. "Langford suspect HR was mobilized today. Temporary setback for Lila. Proceed with caution. Recommend soft reveal within 48 hours. Audit team on standby." He stared at the screen for a long time before hitting send. They'd fired the first shot, but he wasn't done watching. He was done waiting. One morning brought the moment we'd all been waiting for. Damon Carter wasn't at the front desk anymore. He wasn't watching from a bench. He was walking across that marble lobby in a tailored navy suit, flanked by 2 senior partners from Valor Holdings. The receptionist who'd once dismissed him dropped her pen. The security guard who'd tried to escort him out now stood straighter, unsure whether to speak. Damon didn't need the recognition. He scanned his badge, the one bearing official owner access, and the elevator doors opened with a satisfying chime. Upstairs, the quarterly shareholders meeting was in full swing. Malcolm Langford stood at the front, giving his usual confident presentation about agile restructuring and streamlining inefficiencies. His voice filled the room with corporate buzzwords and empty promises. Then the door opened, heads turned. Malcolm's sentence died mid-syllable. Damon entered with calm deliberation, nodded politely to the room, and pulled out the empty chair at the head of the table, the one Malcolm had been occupying moments earlier. "Excuse me," he said. Malcolm's smile returned too quickly, too tightly. "Ah, Mr. Carter, what a surprise." Damon gave him a level look. "I believe it's time for introductions." The lead partner from Valor Holdings cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to formally introduce Damon Carter, majority stakeholder in Harbor and Smith, effective owner as of the close of acquisition recently." Chef's kiss, the drama, murmurs rolled through the room like an earthquake. Damon continued, voice steady as a rock. "I appreciate you keeping the lights on while I took some time to get a closer look at things." Malcolm forced a laugh. "Well, you certainly did that." Damon leaned back, completely in control. "You treated me like I didn't belong. I wanted to see if it was personal or policy." Uncomfortable silence settled over the room like a blanket. Damon didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "In the time I spent walking these halls, I watched how decisions are made, who gets heard and who gets erased. The patterns were clear." A compliance officer at the far end of the table shifted nervously. Damon continued, "I'm not here for drama. I'm here for change, and I prefer not to clean house if I don't have to. But let me be clear. The culture at this company will shift, or the leadership will." Malcolm cleared his throat, forcing fake friendliness. "Of course, we're eager to align with your vision." Damon looked at him and said nothing. The silence was deafening. Paused to appreciate the absolute power of this moment. When the meeting ended, Malcolm caught up with Damon by the elevators. "Look, I didn't know who you were. You caught us off guard." "No," Damon said evenly. "I caught you as you are." Malcolm's mouth opened, but Damon cut him off. "I'm not here to embarrass you, Malcolm. I'm here to build something better. But if you stand in the way of that, I'll have no problem removing the obstacles." The elevator dinged. Damon stepped inside, turned slightly, and delivered the line that would become a viral sensation. "This wasn't a surprise, Malcolm. It was a test." The doors slid shut, leaving Malcolm standing alone, the first bead of sweat sliding down his neck. But Malcolm Langford wasn't going down without a fight. Behind closed doors, he was plotting with his longtime ally Harrison Blake, a board member with salt and pepper hair and the kind of casual arrogance that comes from decades of unchecked privilege. "He's going to gut us," Malcolm said, staring out his office window. Harrison smirked. "So what's your move?" "We stall, delay every initiative he launches, redirect reports, scrub the financials, make it look like he's hemorrhaging resources, and then we leak a narrative, one that questions his legitimacy, his judgment, paint him as erratic, inexperienced, maybe even compromised." Malcolm opened a folder filled with doctored documents, project notes, backdated emails, out-of-context messages. "When it erupts, we push for a vote of no confidence." Harrison whistled low. "You've been busy." "You don't survive this long by waiting to be replaced." And here's the beautiful part. We spin his relationship with Lila as favoritism, say he's compromised professional boundaries. They shook hands on their plan, not knowing they were about to face an opponent who'd been 3 steps ahead from the very beginning. This is where you need to pay attention because the plot twist is insane. The storm didn't arrive with thunder, it came with whispers. Suddenly, Lila's projects were being reevaluated. Her name disappeared from meeting agendas. People started talking about Damon and Lila in hushed tones, implying something inappropriate. Then came the doctored financial reports. Malcolm presented logistics data that looked legitimate but was subtly wrong. Forecasts inflated, deadlines padded, expenses shifted. When Damon questioned the numbers, Malcolm delivered his poison dagger. "We just plugged in revised inputs based on Lila's earlier reports." Lila stiffened. "I didn't approve these numbers." Malcolm tilted his head with fake confusion. "Really? That's odd. IT found some flagged spreadsheets under your profile last night. Last edits traced to your login." The frame job was elegant and vicious. Lila was hauled into HR, accused of manipulating financial data. Meanwhile, the Chicago Ledger ran a headline that made Damon's blood boil. "New owner accused of ethics breach at Harbor and Smith, alleged favoritism." The photo showed Damon in his hoodie from weeks earlier with a caption that read, "Carter's mysterious undercover entrance raises red flags as favoritism inquiry unfolds." Soon, Damon was suspended from all day-to-day decisions pending investigation. Reporters swarmed the building. Lila was quietly moved to a basement cubicle between 2 filing cabinets. As Damon left the building under flashing cameras, he didn't raise his hand or speak. He simply looked up at the same lobby ceiling where they'd once told him to use the side door. They'd pushed him out for now, but the fight was far from over. Later that evening, Damon sat in a private apartment overlooking the river, surrounded by screens and the quiet hum of his legal team. Every file Malcolm had touched, every meeting Harrison had shared, every message HR had flagged, all of it was being pulled, logged, and cataloged. "How much longer?" he asked his lead investigator, Isabel Chun. "Not long," she said, sliding over a hard drive. "We've confirmed doctored logs, backdated communications, proof Lila's data was altered post-login. Malcolm's fingerprints are all over it." Damon stared at the screen showing his own face in that lobby hoodie. "They thought that version of me was the easiest one to destroy. So what now?" Damon stood, straightened his jacket, and spoke with quiet resolve. Now we wait. Wait for what? For the right room, the right moment, and the right silence to break. The comeback is about to be legendary. For a period, Damon Carter disappeared from public view. No statements, no interviews, no damage control, just silence. And in a world addicted to noise, that silence was deafening. Inside Harbor and Smith, Malcolm began walking with his old swagger again. He hosted board meetings, dropped buzzwords like stability and reputation management, and smiled when reporters quoted him as the steady hand guiding the company through turbulence. But Malcolm couldn't shake the feeling that the silence was too intentional. Meanwhile, Lila was living the fallout, stripped of her title, relegated to data entry, receiving the kind of glances that made her question her own worth. Then one morning she found a manila envelope on her desk. Inside were printouts, Slack logs, timestamp audits, metadata trails showing exactly when and how her financial model had been altered. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, "You were never alone, DC." That afternoon, Lila met Damon in a rented co-working space overlooking the river. He sat at a laptop, dressed in dark jeans and a plain sweater, calm as ever. "I thought you were gone," Lila said. "I was quiet," Damon replied. "There's a difference." "Why now? Why not fight back weeks ago?" Damon looked at her steadily. "Because if I had responded then, it would have been emotional, defensive. They were expecting that." He turned the laptop toward her, revealing an organized evidence dashboard. Malcolm's internal memos, Harrison's call logs, financial anomalies, HR manipulations, all tied together with timestamps and witness statements. "They weaponized perception," Damon said. "I'm about to weaponize the truth." Lila stared at the screen. "This is war." "No," Damon said quietly. "This is a reckoning." He smiled for the first time in days. "You've been building this in the dark. You don't win by shouting louder than your enemies. You win by making sure everyone hears what they've been trying to hide." And here comes the plot twist that nobody saw coming. Damon opened a black case containing a remote clicker, a presentation drive, and an invitation to Harbor and Smith's quarterly shareholder conference. His team prepared his drive and set him free. "I'm not going back to clear my name," he said. "I'm going back to reset the standard." Lila looked at the evidence in her hands. "You think they'll listen?" Damon met her eyes. "They won't have a choice." The grand ballroom buzzed with anticipation. Investors, media, board members all gathered for what they thought was just another quarterly review. Malcolm stood confidently near the front exchanging pleasantries, his voice carrying its usual polished confidence. "You're seeing the situation handled gracefully." "He's sure he's not showing up," Harrison muttered. Malcolm smirked. He had his moment. "It's over." The lights dimmed. Malcolm stepped to the microphone and began with his rehearsed charm. "In the last few months, Harbor and Smith has experienced transition, recalibration, and renewal, but through it all, we've upheld our integrity." He didn't get to finish. A voice rang out from the back of the ballroom. "Except that's not true. And it's time everyone in this room saw what actually happened." Heads turned. Malcolm's face went white. Damon Carter stood in the aisle, walking forward in a charcoal suit, calm and certain. Lila followed, carrying a remote and a folder marked Exhibit A. Damon reached the stage, looked Malcolm in the eye, then turned to the crowd. "My name is Damon Carter. I'm the majority stakeholder of Harbor and Smith, and what you've been told these past weeks has been a carefully crafted lie." The screen behind them flickered to life, not with graphs or forecasts, but with emails, messages, audit logs, all time-stamped, all irrefutable. "This," Damon said, pointing, "is an internal memo from Malcolm Langford discussing how to manipulate board votes and delay culture reform." Click. "This is metadata showing Lila's reports were edited after she logged off, then used to accuse her of fraud." "And this," Damon said with growing force, "is surveillance footage of Malcolm mocking my appearance, calling me a hoodie-wearing clown while planning to push me out through fabricated ethics claims." A video played. Malcolm's voice rang clearly over the speakers. "Let him think he's in charge. He's just a dressed-up delivery guy with a bank account." Silence swept the ballroom like a wave. Damon let it settle before speaking again, his voice softer now. "They didn't just try to embarrass me. They tried to erase people like Lila. People who show up every day and give everything only to be silenced by a ceiling no one admits exists." He turned to Malcolm, meeting him eye to eye. "You didn't fear me, Malcolm. You feared what I represented. Accountability." Malcolm stammered. "You manipulated your way in." "I walked in through the same front door you said wasn't mine." Damon turned back to the crowd. "I didn't come here for applause. I came for honesty, and I think it's time we rebuild this company the right way." Lila stepped forward, handing physical files to the board. "This is the complete report. Everything's been verified by an independent third-party firm." One by one, board members looked toward Malcolm, not with loyalty but with cold recognition. He was exposed. Justice is served. The silence after the presentation was heavy, the kind that settles like judgment. Chairwoman Eleanor Ellis, a woman with decades of boardroom experience and zero patience for embarrassment, slowly stood. "Mr. Langford, please step away from the microphone." Malcolm opened his mouth to protest. "Now," she added with finality. Eleanor addressed the board. Based on the evidence presented, I motion for immediate termination of Mr. Langford's employment pending legal review. Unanimous. Security approached. Malcolm looked at Damon with quiet hatred. You think you've won? Damon replied almost gently, No, Malcolm, I think the company just stopped losing. And that is how you deliver justice. But wait, there's more, because Damon Carter had been playing a longer game than anyone realized. At the company's investor appreciation dinner, Damon took the stage for what everyone thought was a victory lap, but he had one more revelation that would blow everyone's minds. Tonight, we celebrate growth, he began. But I'd like to tell you something most of you don't know. Something I've kept close, not to deceive, but to protect the lesson that had to come before it. The room went silent. I didn't just stumble across Harbor and Smith in a portfolio spreadsheet. I didn't choose this company by accident. He paused, letting the tension build. I chose it because I knew who Malcolm Langford was long before he ever saw me. I knew his hiring patterns, his closed-door meetings, the promotions he blocked. Whispers rippled across the room. But here's the part no one expects. Malcolm's former ally Harrison Blake was once married to my cousin. That's how I knew where the cracks lived, long before I ever signed the acquisition papers. The room erupted and gasped. Damon continued, I didn't come here to destroy anyone. I came to expose what was already rotting, to show that merit can't thrive in shadows, that real power doesn't need a title or corner office, it needs integrity. He looked toward Lila, who stood amazed near the side of the room. And to those who ask why I didn't announce myself sooner, the moment I walked in as a man in a hoodie, they showed me everything I needed to know. This time applause rose, not in waves, but in a single powerful surge. I am living for this energy. In time, Harbor and Smith looked the same from the outside. Same sharp lines of glass and steel, same bustling lobby, but inside everything had changed. Lila now sat in a corner office with a view, her title reading Director of Strategic Innovation. The Leadership Advancement Program flyer had been replaced with photos showing faces of every color, gender, and background. Damon had kept his word, not just about justice, but about building something better. Malcolm Langford had quietly disappeared, some said to Florida, others to a law firm downtown. But the real victory wasn't his absence, it was the presence of voices that had been silenced for too long. The company's reputation had rebounded not through spin, but through integrity. Employees flooded Damon's inbox with gratitude. Investors praised his restraint and vision. And Lila, she became the face of the company's transformation, proving that talent doesn't come with a dress code or a pedigree. It comes with persistence, brilliance, and the courage to speak truth to power. If this story doesn't make you believe in justice, I don't know what will. The final scene takes place on the company's rooftop deck, the city skyline stretching out behind them. Lila found Damon there, looking out across the city. Why didn't you fight back sooner? She asked. Damon took a moment, the wind picking up around them, because they were expecting noise, but truth doesn't have to yell to be heard, it just has to arrive when the world's finally ready to listen. Lila smiled. Well, they heard you. This wasn't just about me, Damon said. It was about every person who walked through those doors and was told, verbally or silently, they weren't enough. He turned to her. From now on, they'll know that dignity walks in wearing anything, even a hoodie. Lila laughed through her tears. You know they're going to put that on a plaque, right? Damon chuckled. Let them, just make sure your name's on it too. And that is how you change the world. This story isn't just about one man's journey from outsider to owner. It's about the power of perception, the danger of assumptions, and the incredible strength that comes from staying true to yourself, even when the world tries to make you small. Damon Carter could have walked into that lobby in a $1,000 suit and commanded immediate respect. Instead, he chose to see how they treated someone they thought didn't matter. And in doing so, he revealed the true character of everyone around him. Lila could have stayed quiet, kept her head down, accepted the limitations others placed on her. Instead, she chose to speak up even when it cost her everything. Together, they proved that real power isn't about the clothes you wear or the office you occupy. It's about the courage to stand up for what's right, even when you're standing alone. Smash that subscribe button if you believe in justice. Drop a "if this story gave you chills." Comment Hoodie CEO if you're ready to see more stories like this. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone underestimated. Sometimes justice comes wearing a hoodie, and sometimes the quiet ones are the ones changing the world. What would you do if you were in Damon's position? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to ring that notification bell. You never know when the next incredible story will drop. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight, and remember, never judge a book by its cover. You never know who might be writing the next chapter.